Okay, now I know you're looking at the title and thumbnail and thinking to yourself, Tsunul, why have you reduced yourself to the goon mines? This used to be a channel of integrity is far from the right word, but something. So why are we talking about fan service? Well, here's the thing. I have seen, for lack of a better word, wars over fan service. Yes, I know this sounds stupid, but hear me out. I feel as though within recent times I've heard so many people talk about X game doesn't have fan service, therefore it's bad, or Y game has it, therefore it's amazing. Some examples: Silent Hill remake, bashed for this character not being really hot. Then there's Stellar Blade, a game celebrated for refining the essence of gooning into a playable medium. People have straight up celebrated games having fan service and boycotted ones that don't, vice versa as well. Now when it comes to the actual cultural aspect about all this, I don't care too much to have a say in whatever side I find better. End of the day, if a game has no fan service or much of it, I'll find a way to survive. I don't care too much. I don't know why this is a hill many are willing to treat like fucking Vimy Ridge. I just want the creators of a game to fulfill what they set out to do fully within their own vision. If that involves take biggies, kill them dead. If that involves regular looking human beings, okay, pop off. I personally don't care to rant about why a game needs to have it or not, but at the same time, I have enough interest in this topic to make this entire video, which talks about fan service in games, so well, fuck, here we are. No, since I'm mainly neutral about this war of fan service, that sounds stupid every single time I say it, I mainly want to focus down one thing I hear about it, then give more thoughts on how I feel about the culture war later. But what I hear a lot is that fan service is the surefire way to make money. Just give players an outfit consisting of 3 pieces of floss and then you can make millions. So before diving more into the thoughts behind the war of fan service, I want to see if that statement is in itself true. Now to do this, I'm going to be looking at various gacha games for 2 reasons. 1, you could easily make a correlation between a character who is goon incarnate and what their banner's revenue was. And 2, gacha games are the only game I play nowadays. So I will answer this question utilizing revenue data like a mad scientist. Wait, why do I smell Dr. Pepper? So I am abundantly happy to announce that your boy was sponsored by Ricci City for their Steins Gate collab. Now in case you do not know, Ricci City is a mahjong game in which you play mahjong. However, aside from the obvious, for the event there are many other things to do, such as the claw game where you can amass an army of Upas, doing daily missions to increase your rank, and even a full-blown story for the lab members, where they've been transported to Ricci City by a device Okabe was, more than likely, not handling responsibly. And in it, you see Okabe go full Chunibyo, Mayuri just happy to be there, and Makise wondering if there's enough Dr. Ricci to cope with all this. Now the lab members all get awakening arts and costumes. They have their base designs, which are a great recreation of how the designs were in the original visual novel. Then there's the awakening arts, which are straight up cooking, especially Okabe's where it feels really similar to his Steins Gate Zero design. And all the characters got swimsuit costumes as well, which, gotta say, fitting towards the topic of this video. But something funny you can do is give the characters a nickname. They should not have given me this power. Though all the characters have many voice lines and emotes to unlock, and yes, I will be downloading all of these. Now aside from the lab members, Ricci City has a wide cast of characters, with absolutely stunning art for each of them. And that's without even looking at the various skins all the characters got. And let me level with you real quick. I know Mahjong seems intimidating to get into cause, well, look at all this. But Ricci City has tutorials for new players to understand how to approach Mahjong. So it's not like the game has thrown you to the wolves of Mahjong. I mean, after all, I was able to learn it, so I'm sure you'll be fine. So if you want to get the Steins Gate characters in the collab, feel free to use the download link in the description and pinned comment. And you can use the code to get some items in game, but I need to give a huge thanks to Ricci City for sponsoring this video. Especially as I just love Steins Gate, so being able to do an ad for it, your boy's fangirling a little bit. Though with that being said, let's get back to the video. So I feel with a topic like this, the answer everyone will say is yes, of course it will. I mean, if we're just looking at gacha games, there's way too many examples, but at the same time, let's answer one question first off. Does fan service mean a game will do well? God no. Think about it like this, how many hentai games you see pulling in millions of copies sold? Conversely, think about the amount of games that have done really well without any of that shit. So when people say it's needed, and if the Silent Hill remake doesn't make this character look like they're made of 1% flesh and 99% silicone, then it will fail, you're off on some good shit, give me a hit. So immediately it goes to show that it's not needed. However, does it make a game more money? Is it a surefire way to make cash and are developers stupid for not doing it? And I think the answer to that is a little complicated. So to get to the answer, let's look at some games to see if fan service could be correlated to success or money. And in doing so, it would answer a question on if this is something players want to see. Starting off with the Genshin Impact, does it beat the allegations of just appealing to horny teenagers without having much substance to stand on its own 2 feet? Best way to break this down is to go over how it succeeded and why some banners brought in more money than a country's GDP, and why others flopped. Yet still pulled in fucking 5 million. So as we all know, the game dropped and frame 1, the first banner pulled in 30 million USD, which is kinda insane, but when has Genshin surpassed that launch banner's revenue? It had a great start, but what brought it to the next level in terms of metrics? What has been the catalyst? To start with checking this out, let's look at the banner revenue. Now this data is from Genshin Labs and is an estimate of the CN revenue, so I'm not saying this is 1,000,000% accurate. In truth, the revenue numbers are more than likely higher, but it gives us a good estimate. So only 8 banners have surpassed the launch limited banner. Yelan and Xiao, then Raiden's solo banner, explains why everyone Doom posted about her being the equivalent to a pack of withering toothpicks if you don't have her at C2. Raiden and Kokomi's rerun, Nahida's first banner where she was paired with Yoimiya. Sorry to say, Yoimiya fans, Nahida probably carried that one. Ayaka's rerun, didn't know she had that big of a fan base. Ayaka and Shenhei, I feel like Ayaka carried that, but the two have really good synergy, so it makes sense it popped off. Raiden and Ayato, that's the third Raiden banner up here, and the one that has a gigantic gap at the top is Hu Tao and Yelan's dual banner. Hu Tao at the top, you'll love to see it. And I'm not surprised this is the top banner. This was Hu Tao's second rerun and it took over a year since her first rerun to drop. Pair that up with the fact she's also pretty nice at C1. Yelan is one of her best supports, also nice at C1 as well. Fucking Xingqiu is on the banner and oh, yeah, both of their weapons are godlike. I'm not surprised this pulled in 46 million, hell I rolled on the banner to get my Hu Tao team comp. But looking at these banners I've come to a realization. The realization is that I feel like most of them popped off because the units themselves are just good for gameplay. Venti aside, as a starting banner will just do well, that's how it is for most gachas. But it is important to note that people were high-key glazing him on the release of the game, saying that he was one of the best units. Granted, they also said that about Diluc, and well, time showed both of them motherfuckers were frauds. But all the listed units have a pretty dominant spot in the meta. Well, in some cases had, as newer units have power crept some of them, like Arlecchino being seen as better than Hu Tao. But for the many years before Alfredo was released, Hu Tao was seen as a meta-dominant unit. Though you can maybe exclude Raiden, as on her release there was a ton of Doom posting on if she was really good without C2. Granted, we now have Hyperbloom teams for her, so even at C0 she is really damn good, but again, looking at when she launched, there was debate on her viability as a main DPS. I would say she still was considered to be a good unit, but not at the levels of the other banners up there, like Hu Tao and Ayaka. And in terms of fan service, I'ma just say it, I don't think many of these characters are. Of course they all have fans, I mean just look at the number of artworks that have been made for them, but I don't feel like any of them are the type of, well, Azur Lane, Girls Frontline 2, Nikke type of fan service. Don't ask me why I knew all those games. All the characters up there are just largely lovable characters. Now I'm not saying that all fans love them due to personality, hell, I've seen Genshin fans. But I'm saying that they're not exactly cardboard cutouts that look nice. The only two I'd say that don't have any lovable traits, and I will be crucified for saying this, but the two would be Raiden and Kokomi. Straight up, at first, Raiden's personality was only slightly more complex than a titty mouse pad. Kokomi isn't doing much better either, and Inazuma's story was easily the worst out of any post-launch region. It was a fairly low time for the game, so if I had to pick a unit that got good revenue just from fan service, then I'd say them two fall under that category. Raiden more so though, as on her release banner she had no character. Keep in mind, we didn't get her second character quest, the one that actually gave her character, until 5 months after her release. Pair that up with the fact that Inazuma's story wasn't well received and she wasn't being touted as an absolute must-pull top-tier unit unless she was at C2, then out of all the banners up there, I'd say hers was the most driven by fan service. I mean, just look at her ult. If I absolutely had to pick a banner that was carried by fan service, Raiden's fits the best. Because when you take the fact that she wasn't being touted as a god in gameplay, and at the time her character was less complex than a Rubik's Cube, I'ma go out on a limb and say that generating 33 million came from other huge aspects. Except for her repeat banners, as with those we saw how good she could be at C0 with a Hyperbloom team, and by then we had more story for her, so there was more reason to roll. Though after looking at the banner profit, I'd say for Genshin, the biggest driving force for revenue is unit viability over fan service, and the banners that pulled in the least only support that. Yay Miko's third rerun and Zhao's fourth. Seriously, yay Miko at the bottom. Fucking yay Miko. Homie, someone who has never heard the words Genshin Impact in their life probably saw lewds of this motherfucker, yet she's dead at the bottom. Now, repaid banners do have a trend of generating less, like Zhongli, despite all the controversy on his initial release banner, pulled in less for his rerun, which was after he was proven to be a really strong unit. Now, the timing of EA's banner wasn't exactly the most ideal either, but even with that being the case, Jesus Christ, this pulled in less than Kaching's banner. And aside from that, Ye's release banner didn't exactly shatter expectations. Then there's Eula's second rerun and Klee's third rerun. Childe's rerun, I refuse to call him child, it sounds weird to me. Klee's rerun, Kokomi's first fucking banner. Damn, they did Genshin's take on Vaporeon fucking raw. And sure enough, looking at the bottom, all of these units are not meta. Kokumi aside, but once she dropped, damn near everyone treated getting her as the equivalent to taking a fucking sledgehammer and doing core workouts on your account. People say she's godlike now, possibly leading to her rerun with Raiden pulling in 33 million, but when she dropped, she was slandered more than Amber. Though I do know that saying a unit in Genshin isn't meta is a little weird, as Genshin is in a perpetual loop of new character drops, people glaze them like Jesus resurrected, 2 weeks pass, they're now the shittiest thing in existence. Then over time they get power crept by another character, but due to how the elemental system works, the character can be used in any team comp and they'll find a way to be viable. However, with that being the case, I'd still say most of these units are not considered to be that strong. Zhongli and Kokumi aside, but I feel the circumstances around those times were different. But looking at the graph, the bottom of banner revenue correlates with the bottom of unit viability. And again, yes, all of these units are still perfectly usable. Hell, it's Genshin. A chewed up piece of tree bark is still viable, but they are not at the top of the meta is the point I'm making. So in Genshin, I think a unit being strong is what mainly drives the revenue of their banner. Fan service is a secondary thing, as surprising as that is to say. I mean, look at Klee. On release, touted as the best pyro DPS, 22 million. Helps, she was the second limited banner of the game, but I don't think that's the only reason it got 22 million. Then Hu Tao gets dropped, power creeps Klee. Klee has a rerun, 7 million. Now this logic would also explain why Ayaka's and Kokumi's rerun pulled in more than their first release, as many people got to know their meta viability after their first drop. Also explain why Eula's second rerun didn't pull in that much revenue. It was set up to do really well. I mean, her first rerun and the second had damn near 2 years in between. So anyone who really wanted Eula over the course of a year and a half would have had to roll on that banner. And in terms of fan service, I'ma just say it. Eula has more cake than the fucking whole Cake Island arc from One Piece. Hell, she has almost as much art made for her as Ayaka has, so she's definitely got fans. Yet her rerun that was done a year and a half after her first release scored second lowest out of all of the banners. And I mean, yo, Klee ain't doing the banner any favors, but dog, that dual banner generated half of what her original banner did. And obviously enough, many people think Eula is not a good character anymore. On her release, people said she was good, but as the meta progressed and physical just got ignored, she slowly faded into obscurity. All of this is why I think in Genshin, the meta generates more pulls than fan service. Because if Eula's banner did that bad despite, you know, then I can't really say fan service is the biggest driving force. Shit, look at Dehya. Great story, great character, looks amazing, generated less than Ito. On a dual banner. No favors were done with us knowing she'd be put on the standard banner after, but let's be real. The main reason she didn't generate that much is because she is trash gameplay wise. Everything about Dehya is godlike, except for the gameplay. So in Genshin's case, I don't think you can say that the game survives by just fan service. Don't get it twisted. The game definitely relies on that, and the player base does go insane for realistically any character with a pulse. Maybe even some without a pulse. But I'd say despite a lot of Genshin fans being outspoken in some regards, the game doesn't inherently rely on fan service to sell characters. Now, the motherfuckers look good, but Genshin ain't at the level of Zenless Zone Zero. There's layers to this shit. Though even with the allegations against Genshin players, it seems like they will spend more for a unit that's meta viable. However, fan service can have a notable trend in unit sales. After all, Raiden, 33 million. Then you look at one of the best characters in the game, Neuvillette, 13 million. Now there is more to expand upon here, but I'd say in Genshin, unit viability does trump fan service for sales. However, fan service still has notable help. But now I'm gonna move to a game that I'd say really popped off due to fan service. That game being Blue Archive. And yes, I will be making a shit ton of Blue Archive jokes. I cannot help myself, and I'm not sorry. But the Honeypot game dropped in Japan a smidge before Uma Musume. Now, in case you don't know, that gacha is popular as fuck in Japan. But that made it so Blue Archive was looking bleak. The game wasn't doing too well, Uma Musume popping off made most people just ignore Blue Archive, and at the time, the game itself wasn't the most solid. Then one event changed everything. They did something that would revitalize the game and make people fall in love with it. They released Bunny Girl units. I'm not even fucking around. This is what saved the game. This shit released and every single artist woke up like a damn sleeper agent and decided to draw these characters in their bunny girl outfits. So if you went on pics of Twitter, dog, anything that held the capacity to display an image, hell, your damn fax machine too, you saw these characters during that time. Hell, I saw their art before I even knew what in the hell a Blue Archive was. For a point of comparison, think about how popular Yelan is. Think of how many arts you have seen of her using the fucking bondage strings. So on Pixiv, there are 7,000 artworks of Yelan. Now in terms of artworks, just about the Bunny Chaser event, not about the individual characters, just about that specific Bunny Girl event, there is almost 12,000. Meanwhile, Hu Tao has 18,000 artworks. That one event generated 2/3 of the art of one of Genshin's most popular characters. And hell, Asuna herself has 16,000 artworks. The popularity of the Bunny Girls gave Blue Archive its time in the sun. Since that event caused so many artists to draw about the game, they inadvertently promoted it, thus leading to more people knowing of it. And this was 2 months before the global release of the game, so it only served to help its global success. All the artwork was the freest and most effective way of advertising the game, but they did not gain overnight success from it. They went back and actually improved the game, just made it better after that initial burst of popularity. Fanservice lit the fire for the game, but just actually making a good product is what led millions to play it, and then shortly get put on the FBI's watch list. Now let's talk about a game that has always been known for fanservice and has arguably lived off of it. Fate Grand Order. Though I'd say that Fate Grand Order has largely survived off of two things, the story and characters, because God knows that gameplay is not pulling its weight. Across the character list, I'd say a ton of them do classify as fanservice, but not in the Coomer way. I mean, a fuck ton are in the Coomer way, but a lot of the fanservice is mainly based around just bringing back beloved characters. For example, having Gilgamesh as a servant, beloved character. A ton of the reason people want to get him is just because fans knew him from prior Fate stuff. Same idea goes with Arturia, Astolfo, Emiya, Kyrie, Frankenstein, Waver, Jean, the Samurai Remnant characters, Bazette, Tamamo, Mordred, Jack, Nero, anyone from Prilia, Ishtar, as she's basically just Rin with a foot fetish, and same principle with Eris, as she wasn't going to be rollable, but since everyone loved her in Babylonia, they dropped her banner a year after Babylonia's release. Point is, a shit ton of the cast is fanservice as players already love these motherfuckers from prior Fate stuff. They were made rollable because the players wanted them, and that's not even counting how the beloved characters get 28 altars and a goddamn minifigurine set released along with them. But the case of Fate Grand Order is really unique. You got a game that can heavily sustain itself off of just fanservice because the IP is one of the strongest in Japan. Unless the game was literally unplayable, it was gonna do well. I mean shit, on release its combat was ass. The sprites looked like bobbleheads and the story was... It existed is the best compliment I can give. It didn't really get good until Camelot, which was a year after its initial release, and even with the game being in easily its worst state, Gilgamesh's banner pulled in 1.8 million. And for a gacha game in 2017, that was really rare to see. So Fate Grand Order could have lived off of fanservice because the IP has done so much to make people fall in love with it. It's in a very unique spot that most other games just aren't. It pulled in 1.8 million for a game that most would agree was ass. However, with time FGO improved. The story got better, the gameplay was semi-salvaged, and there was a ton of updates. And because of that, generating 1.8 million for the game isn't really an outlier, it's kinda normal. And that's weird to say when most gachas die in less than 4 years, whilst this is being said 7 years after the Gilgamesh banner. But the point I'm making is that with time the game got much better, and because of that, average monthly revenue is able to dust the revenue off of a banner that had one of the most beloved servants in the entire series, paired up with 2 fan favorites as well. Now all of this is building to an overall conclusion, but let's focus down Snowbreak Containment Zone. It's a third-person shooter gacha that released about 9 months ago. Yep, that shit dated precisely when I wrote this fucking script. The style it went for in its character design was very tactical gear, basically what you would imagine waifus would wear after enlisting for the military. Now I haven't played too much of it, but from what I've seen it went for a more serious tone at release. And its launch revenue did really well. July brought in 1 million and August brought in 1.2 million, counting mobile revenue only, nothing from the PC port or the Steam version that dropped a bit after launch. But in September, the game only brought in 300,000. Still a ton, but definitely a step away from when it was first brought in. Then October brought in 160,000. A reason for the revenue taken is because the character banner in September was someone you could get on the standard banner, so there wasn't too much of a reason to roll, and October didn't have too much new content. And both of these months weren't really helped by the fact the PC version played much better than mobile, so some people definitely migrated to that. But in November, the mobile revenue doubled, so that begs the question, what the hell was done in November? And the answer is, the Coomer patch. Swimsuits released for the cast. Tig Biggie's Full Moon's bunny suits. You think Azur Lane has it? The November update brought it. The game hard pivoted, intentional wording, from its original style of tactical stuff to have a ton of, well, a ton of nothing when you really break it down. And then in December they released a character that, yeah. Then in January for marketing they released this, and yes, there is no added audio. It's ASMR with Very heavily suspicious noises in the background. Yeah, long story short, the game took its identity as a tactical third-person shooter and evolved into being 3D Azur Lane. This is the most blatant Coomer patch I can think of, dog. If a priest stripped bare-ass naked and started busting it down midway through a sermon, I view that as less of a change than what this game did. Let's even talk about how during Valentine's, this is the mail you got from all the playable girls. And then the final mail you got was a message ripped from the beginning of a 40-page doujin with a fucking stamina potion attached to the mail. It does feel like the developers made the game, saw the revenue drop, and thought to themselves, well, if we make our players hard, that shit's gotta be a nice beginning for a solid foundation. So the revenue kept at November's 300k, and in January it bounced to $500,000, which is because that's when Calla Klein dropped. In case you do not know her, this is her design. Yeah, wonder why she brought in $500,000. And because of this, Snowbreak Containment Zone is the most accurate example of a Coomer patch being deployed to save a game. The revenue was tanking, but the fan service was able to make it more consistent. And within recent time, the CN revenue has jumped to 2.7 million, global at almost $1 million. Now, it is important to note that Sensor Tower's data is not exactly dead to rights. It shouldn't be seen as fact. The actual truth is that these numbers are likely lower than what the games are actually bringing in. However, I still find, even with that flaw in the data, this to be one of the more reliable sources we have of revenue tracking. And aside from that, the popularity of the game has been steadily increasing after this different focus for it was made. Now, this also came with, on the Steam page, having a mature rating for sexual content. Can't imagine why that's the case when this is the first ad that plays on the page. So yeah, Snowbreak Containment Zone is the most accurate example of a game dipping into fan service and saving itself from that. Granted, it's maybe not necessarily a dip into fan service and instead a bath into it, but that's neither here nor there. Though even with fan service having seemingly helped the game a ton, it's still not pulling in huge numbers. If gooning was the only thing that drove the revenue, then why did Azur Lane triple this game's revenue in January? They're both fan service oriented games, so why the difference? Well, Azur Lane being out for years doesn't really help us. That means it has a way more dedicated audience, but another reason is fan service cannot solely save a game. You see, after going through these examples, I've started to notice a pattern. Fan service boosts a game's popularity. Blue Archive got its time in the sun from it, now it's a huge game. Genshin had everyone on social media raving about the characters. Hell, some Genshin characters have been drawn so much to where one of them has more art made of them than an entire game. People then see the art, ask where the character is from, and then download the game. Both of those examples are fan service giving a game free advertisement. So fan service, within a large part, helped those games get popular. Fate Grand Order is an outlier, as due to its IP, everyone already knew it, so it's not that it gave the game its time in the sun, but more so that dropping characters people love just meant more money. And in the case of Snowbreak Containment Zone, it dropped, was met with some popularity, players started to leave due to a lack of content, they dropped some ASMR with tongue fucking .wav playing in the background, and a shit ton of people were like, real shit? And evidently got back into the game. Fanservice helped the games pop off, but you cannot survive with just fanservice. The most blatant evidence of that is realistically any cash grab gacha game that gets released for an anime. To pick one out, My Hero Academia, the strongest hero. From a beloved manga, wow, that shit really dated when this fucking script was made. Okay, holy shit. From a manga with a McDonald's employee as a protagonist to, from what I've heard about it, a game so dog shit that everyone stopped caring about it. In terms of fan service, you had a fairly dedicated, tested within recent times, fan base. The fucking My Hero Academia fan base. Them motherfuckers would literally storm Normandy for the sake of their characters and ships. Yet the game was so utter ass to where no one gave a damn about it. Then for Gooner fan service, look at the bottom of Sensor Tower's stats. That is a spreadsheet of dying gachas, and if you look at most of them, they got the Coomer designs, yet those are not enough to save it. Then take Devil May Cry, Peak of Combat. One of the most beloved IPs, characters in it are amazing, game's ass, guess what? It's dying. Unless you are at the level of Fate, fan service on its own will never save a game. It will mainly serve to make it more popular. As, unsurprisingly, it's something people want to see. Fan service gets people into the door. An actual solid game makes people care about it. Hell, look at Nier Automata. There are more polygons in 2B's ass than there are in the entirety of Ocarina of Time. When this game dropped, everyone was talking about 2B, 7 years after the game's release, and people are still talking about her. But Nier Automata didn't sell well just because of 2B's ass. It popped off because the game on its own was amazing. Meanwhile, look at Nier, the PlayStation 3 version of it. Same exact case as Nier Automata. Story was amazing, some even say better than Automata, and it has kinda damn near same vibes as 2B. but the game didn't do that well. Reason being, the PlayStation 3 version has combat that felt like if you took Dark Souls 2 dogshit gameplay and flayed it in the 9th layer of hell, which was due to the fact that Square Enix didn't give Yoko Taro any budget for his works, which is why Drakengard 3 ran like a hellhound with every known drug injected into it, but I digress. Both games got fan service and an amazing story, but one is a much more polished experience and an all-around better game, so it was able to do better as the product, aside from fan service, was just good. And sure enough, the Nier remake sold over 1 million copies. Incredibly similar to the PlayStation 3 version, but it did better as the overall experience of the game was leagues above the PlayStation 3 version. So yeah. Fanservice exists as a good advertisement for games. Same shit's the case with Stellar Blade. I knew nothing about that game, but because of people going gorillas bananas about the fanservice, I now know a shit ton about it. All they did was make jiggle physics, then the gooners and anti-gooners advertised the game to every single living organism with the controversies of it. Now from what I've heard, the game itself seems damn good, so I think it's gonna be a hit when it releases. And guess fucking what? I wrote this script months ago, but didn't make the video till now cause my time management is dog shit, but who was right? Me in the past and the 1 million+ copies shipped up sold of Stellar Blade. It's another case where people know of something due to what everyone's talking about, but the actual quality of the game is what makes them want to play it. So that's what I think about fanservice in a game. Unless your IP is as strong as something like Fate, fanservice on its own cannot save a game. We've seen many cash grab dogshit games be made to profit on something's popularity. Those have a track record of failing. We've seen games come out and the only saving grace of them is, oh, the characters are hot. We've seen those fail over and over. But when you make a product that is actually good, unsurprisingly, people want to play it. From their fan service, either it be hot characters or cameos that people love, serves as an effective advertisement. Remember when Mortal Kombat brought in Omni-Man and Homelander as playable characters? Fans loved it, everyone was talking about it, but if that game on its own was hot ass, nobody would have cared. So that's my thought when it comes to people saying fan service is needed or that it's a cheap way to get money. Now we come to the pseudo-culture war aspect about all this, where some people will love a game or hate it due to fan service, and honestly, I think feeling either way is incredibly fair. If you don't want to play a game, simply just don't. If you think the title of a game is stupid, that's a valid reason to not play it. End of the day, it's your time. You can choose however you want to spend it. However, when it comes to criticism, that's when the critiques need to be more valid. And then that's when people split hairs. Now, to take any stance of, I want fan service in a game or I don't want it, I don't care too much. As my perspective is, I want the creators of something to fully and faithfully achieve their vision. That is frame one, what I want out of art. If you would call games art, but I feel as though most people already do. I just want the creators to make what they want to make. Now, that doesn't mean I'll fully agree with the final product. After all, if the developers adhere to their vision and made a pile of dog shit, I'm not playing a pile of dog shit. I just want that passion to be what drives the cart. The end destination I may not like, but I prefer that to be the driving force of creation. So when it comes to if games should or shouldn't have fan service, my answer is, I just want the creators to do what they are passionate about. And from there, my like of the game will be judged by the actual product. It's like, you got Nikke, a game of fan service. I'm sure I'll find a way to survive, I don't really care about it. Then you got this shit-ass mobile game I'm regretting playing for a video I might make in the future, fucking Dream Girlfriend. In that dog shit, you literally make a waifu and train them to become more human, I suppose? And you gotcha for clothes and shit for the character to wear. And deadass, that feels like the most incel-ass game I've ever played, dog, I won't even hold you. And that's what I mean when I say in this pseudo-culture war, I don't care to take a specific side as I find dislike towards the game will just depend on the contents of it. Not for the category of fan service to non-fan service. So that's my thoughts when it comes to the pseudo-culture war of fan service, bro. It sounds so dumb every single time I say it. Little pup, your head is in the sand. You